Chosen one, no more wait from God, unexpected meeting. Have you ever felt that strange pull, like God's trying to get your attention, but you're not quite sure why? You know, that feeling when you're lying awake at night, wondering if all those coincidences in your life actually mean something bigger. Well, chosen one, if you're watching this right now, it's definitely not by chance. Hey there, beautiful souls. You're right on time for something extraordinary. Chosen one, no more wait from God, unexpected meeting. But this isn't just another spiritual video you'll scroll past. What if I told you that only ones of people actually recognize when God is calling them to a higher purpose? And guess what? Your presence here might just mean you're part of that rare group. You see, what makes this message different is that it's not about some distant future or vague promises. We're talking about right now, this moment. Have you been feeling that subtle shift lately? Those unexplainable synchronicities? That persistent feeling that something big is about to change in your life? I get it. Maybe you've been feeling lost, misunderstood, or even ridiculed for your spiritual beliefs. Perhaps you've been waiting for a sign, a confirmation that all your struggles haven't been in vain. But what if today is that confirmation you've been waiting for? Here's what's truly special about this message. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why you've been chosen, but also receive clear guidance about the divine meeting that awaits you. Think about it. How many times have you wished for absolute clarity about your spiritual path? Well, that clarity is exactly what you're about to receive. This isn't just another motivational talk. This is your wake-up call, your divine appointment card, if you will. And trust me, once you understand what's coming, everything, yes, everything, that's happened in your life will suddenly make perfect sense. Before we dive deeper into this life-changing revelation, I need to know, have you been experiencing any of these divine signs lately? If you've been feeling unexplainably drawn to spiritual messages, or if you've been experiencing increased synchronicities in your life, drop a 770 in the comments. Let's see how many of us are truly awakening to this divine calling. Remember, you're not here by accident. The fact that you're still watching, that's already a sign. So, are you ready to discover why God has led you here at this exact moment? Let's begin this incredible journey together. Part 1. The signs of being chosen. Have you ever noticed those moments when everything seems to align in ways that defy coincidence? Those times when you feel a gentle nudge from the universe, pushing you towards something greater. What if I told you these aren't random occurrences, but divine markers specifically placed in your path? Let me share a fascinating story that echoes through time, one that perfectly illustrates the signs of being chosen. Picture Jerusalem, around 1050 BC. A young shepherd boy named David, seemingly ordinary, yet marked by God for an extraordinary purpose. Like many of you watching right now, David probably had no idea that his everyday experiences were actually divine preparations. Think about it. David wasn't born into nobility. He wasn't the strongest, the tallest, or even the eldest among his brothers. In fact, when the prophet Samuel came to Jesse's house to anoint the future king, David wasn't even invited to the ceremony. Can you imagine that? The chosen one, literally left out in the fields with the sheep. Sound familiar to your own experiences of feeling overlooked? But here's where it gets interesting. While everyone else saw a simple shepherd boy, God saw a king. Those lonely nights watching the sheep, they were actually divine training grounds. That courage he developed fighting off lions and bears to protect his flock. That wasn't just job experience. It was preparation for facing Goliath. You see, being chosen often looks like this. Ordinary moments infused with extraordinary purpose. And just like David, you might be experiencing these signs right now. Let me break them down for you. First, there's the pattern of divine isolation. Just as David was often alone with his sheep, You might find yourself feeling somewhat separated from others. Not because you're antisocial, but because you're antisocial, but because God is creating a sacred space for your preparation. Those moments when you feel like nobody quite gets you, that's not rejection, that's protection. Then there's the supernatural confidence that seems to come out of nowhere. Remember how David faced Goliath? Everyone else saw an impossible giant, but David saw a divine appointment. Have you been experiencing that lately? That inexplicable knowing that you can handle situations that should, by all logical standards, overwhelm you. Here's another sign that's often misunderstood: divine opposition. Yes, you heard that right. Just as David faced Saul's jealousy and persecution, opposition often confirms your chosen status. Think about it. Why would there be so much resistance if there wasn't something significant about your path? But perhaps the most telling sign is the deep, unshakable knowing in your spirit. It's that quiet certainty that whispers to you in the middle of the night, telling you that you're meant for more. Just as David wrote in Psalm 139:16, "All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." Let me share something powerful here. In my 2 decades of studying divine patterns, I've noticed that those truly chosen by God often face a unique combination of supernatural confidence and human doubt. It's like carrying a treasure in an earthen vessel. You know you have something precious, but the container feels inadequately ordinary. Now, here's what most people don't realize about being chosen. It's not about being perfect. David made plenty of mistakes. Remember his incident with Bathsheba. But being chosen isn't about perfection. It's about perfection. It's about purpose. Your mistakes don't disqualify you. They're often part of the preparation process. Consider this. Right now, you might be experiencing what I call the divine paradox, feeling simultaneously special and inadequate. That's actually a sign. The chosen ones often walk this tightrope between knowing they're called for something greater while feeling entirely unqualified for it. As we transition into understanding God's perfect timing in your life, remember this: just as David's journey from shepherd to king wasn't overnight, your path is unfolding in divine sequence. Every challenge, every moment of isolation, every inexplicable confidence in the face of impossible odds, these aren't random events. They're carefully orchestrated signs confirming your chosen status. And speaking of timing, let's talk about why right now. Yes, this very moment might be the crucial turning point you've been waiting for. But before we dive into that, take a moment to reflect. How many of these signs resonate with your experience? Are you beginning to see your life's coincidences in a new light? As these signs become clearer in your life, you might be wondering about the timing of it all. Why now? Why these specific moments? Well, that's exactly what we're about to explore. And trust me, what you're about to learn will transform how you see every single moment of your journey. Part 2, the divine timeline. Have you ever wondered why certain moments in your life feel divinely orchestrated? Why some periods of waiting seem to stretch endlessly while others rush by in the blink of an eye? And most importantly, why does it sometimes feel like God's timing is so different from our own? Let me share a powerful story from both ancient times and our modern world that illuminates the mystery of divine timing. In the Bible, we find the remarkable story of Joseph, a young man who waited 13 years from the time of his prophetic dreams until their fulfillment. Imagine being in Joseph's shoes, sold into slavery by your own brothers, imprisoned for crimes you didn't commit, yet holding onto a divine promise that seemed impossibly distant. But here's where it gets fascinating. Just like Joseph, many of today's chosen ones are experiencing what I call the divine acceleration timeline. You see, in the past few years, we've witnessed an unprecedented spiritual awakening. People from all walks of life, just like you, have been experiencing intense periods of trial followed by sudden, dramatic breakthroughs. Consider Sarah, a woman I met last year in New York. She had spent 8 years feeling spiritually isolated, misunderstood by her family and friends. Every morning, she would wake up with an inexplicable knowing that something significant was about to happen. It was like having a spiritual alarm clock that kept ringing, she told me, laughing through tears. But I couldn't find the snooze button. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. While sitting in her office, surrounded by the usual chaos of Manhattan life, she experienced what she describes as a divine download, a moment of crystal clear understanding about her spiritual purpose. The years of waiting suddenly made perfect sense. This pattern isn't random. In the book of Habakkuk, we find these powerful words, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come." Think about that. An appointed time. Not too early, not too early, not too late, but precisely when it needs to happen. You know what's really interesting? Scientists have recently discovered something they call quantum entanglement, where particles can instantly affect each other regardless of distance. It's as if they're operating on a different timeline altogether. Isn't it amazing how modern science is catching up to what spiritual seekers have known for millennia? God's timing operates on a completely different frequency from our earthly understanding. But here's the crucial part, and this is where it gets really exciting. We're currently in what biblical scholars call the end of days acceleration. No, I'm not talking about doom and gloom. I'm talking about a time when divine appointments are being scheduled with increasing frequency. It's like God's spiritual calendar has suddenly opened up, and the chosen ones are being called in for their long-awaited meetings. Think about your own life for a moment. Haven't you noticed how certain events are starting to align in unexplainable ways? Those coincidences that feel too perfect to be random. That's not your imagination. It's divine timing in action. Let me share something that might blow your mind. According to ancient Hebrew wisdom, there's a concept called kairos time, God's perfect timing, as opposed to chronos time, which is our regular chronological time. When you're operating in kairos time, everything accelerates. It's like being in the express lane of spiritual development. And here's the most exciting part. The signs suggest that we're entering a massive kairos moment. The waiting period for many chosen ones is coming to an end. Just as Joseph's 13 years of preparation culminated in a single day that changed everything, many of you are standing on the brink of your divine appointment. But remember this, and it's crucial, divine timing isn't just about waiting passively. It's about active preparation. Even while Joseph was in prison, he was developing the leadership skills he would need later. Every challenge you faced, every moment of doubt, every sleepless night questioning your path, these weren't delays. They were preparation. As we transition into understanding what this divine meeting actually means, let me leave you with this thought. Your timeline isn't just a series of random events. It's a carefully orchestrated symphony, and right now, the crescendo is building. The question isn't whether you'll have your divine appointment, it's whether you're ready for what happens when it arrives. Remember, when God's timing aligns with your preparation, miracles don't just happen, they become inevitable. Are you feeling that alignment starting to happen in your own life? Drop a 555 in the comments if you've been experiencing these divine synchronicities. Your testimony might be exactly what another chosen one needs to hear today. Part 3. Breaking through rejection. Ever wonder why the people closest to you sometimes seem the furthest from understanding your spiritual journey? Have you felt that deep ache when family members raise their eyebrows at your faith, or friends dismiss your divine experiences as just a phase? Let me share a story that might feel surprisingly familiar to your own journey. Picture Sarah, a young woman in Manhattan. She works at a prestigious law firm, has the corner office with a view of Central Park, and from the outside she's living the dream. But inside, she feels that unmistakable divine pull, a calling that's becoming impossible to ignore. Just like many chosen ones, Sarah starts experiencing undeniable signs, prophetic dreams, supernatural coincidences, and a deep knowing that God has something extraordinary planned for her life. But here's where it gets interesting and perhaps painfully relatable. When Sarah starts sharing these experiences with her family, their reactions aren't exactly supportive. Her father, a pragmatic businessman, suggests she's working too hard. Her mother schedules appointments with therapists. Her siblings make jokes about her getting religious at Sunday dinners. Sound familiar? This modern-day rejection mirrors an ancient pattern we see throughout biblical history. Remember Joseph? His own brothers threw him into a pit because they couldn't handle his divine dreams and calling. Moses. His own people questioned his leadership countless times, even after witnessing miracle after miracle. Even Jesus himself faced rejection from his hometown, prompting him to say, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home." Matthew 13:57. But here's the fascinating part. Rejection isn't just a test. It's actually a divine marker. Think about it. Why would the enemy work so hard to discourage you through the opinions of others if you weren't truly chosen? Every eye roll, every dismissive comment, every concerned intervention from well-meaning family members. These are actually confirmation that you're on the right path. Let's go back to Sarah's story. One evening, after a particularly difficult family dinner where her sister had mockingly called her Saint Sarah, she retreated to her apartment feeling broken and alone. That's when something extraordinary happened. As she sat in her tear-stained silence, she felt a presence fill her room, a divine comfort so tangible it took her breath away. In that moment, God showed her how every rejection was actually preparing her for a greater purpose. You see, rejection has a unique way of stripping away our dependence on human approval. It's like spiritual weightlifting. Each instance of being misunderstood builds spiritual muscles you'll need for your divine mission. Think of it as your own personal training program, custom, designed by God himself. Here's a truth that might shift your perspective. Those who reject your calling often become the very proof of your transformation later. Sarah's story didn't end in that tear-filled moment. 2 years later, her entire family witnessed undeniable evidence of her divine connection. But that's a story for another time. The point is, their rejection became the foundation for a testimony that would later help countless others understand their own spiritual journey. Remember this: Moses didn't become Moses by having everyone understand his calling. David didn't become David by having his brothers believe in him. And you won't become who you're meant to be by waiting for everyone's approval. The rejection you're facing, it's not just a test, it's a tool, crafting you into someone who can carry divine purpose without being crushed by human opinion. But here's where your story takes an unexpected turn. Just as you're reading this, feeling that resonance deep in your spirit, know that you're approaching a divine breakthrough. The season of rejection is shifting into a season of divine revelation. All those moments when you felt misunderstood were actually preparing you for an unexpected meeting, a divine encounter that will transform everything. And speaking of transformation, what you're about to discover about this divine encounter will completely reshape how you view every struggle you've ever faced. Think about it. When was the last time you felt deeply misunderstood about your spiritual journey? If you've experienced this kind of rejection, comment chosen below. Let's build a community of understanding among those who walk this unique path. Part 4. The Divine Transformation. Have you ever wondered what true divine transformation really looks like? What happens when God decides it's time to elevate you beyond your current existence? And most importantly, how will you know when this extraordinary moment arrives? Let me share a profound story from the Bible that perfectly illustrates this divine transformation. The story of Enoch. Now, you might be thinking, oh great, another Bible story. But trust me, this isn't your typical Sunday school lesson. This is about something far more extraordinary. Picture this. A man walking through life, going about his daily routine, when suddenly he experiences something so profound that it literally transforms his entire existence. In Genesis 5:24, we read Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more, because God took him. But here's what makes this fascinating. Enoch didn't die in the traditional sense. He was transformed, elevated to a higher realm of existence. Think about that for a moment. Enoch was living his life, probably dealing with the same kinds of struggles you're facing right now. Bills to pay, relationships to maintain, doubts to overcome. Yet there was something different about him. He maintained such a close relationship with God that the divine literally couldn't wait to bring him home. But here's where it gets really interesting. The book of Hebrews gives us more detail about Enoch's transformation, saying he was taken up so that he should not see death. Now, imagine being so in tune with God's plan that you skip the whole dying part altogether. That's what I call the ultimate spiritual upgrade. You see, divine transformation isn't just about changing your physical form. It's about elevating your entire being to a higher state of consciousness. It's like getting a spiritual promotion, if you will. Remember how your smartphone needs occasional updates to function at its best? Well, think of this as God's ultimate system upgrade for your soul. Let me break this down in a way that might hit closer to home. You know that feeling when you're about to make a huge life change. Maybe it's moving to a new city, starting a new job, or ending a significant relationship. There's that mix of excitement and nervousness, right? Divine transformation is like that, but amplified 1,000 times. But here's the part that most people miss. This transformation isn't just about leaving things behind. It's about stepping into something greater. When Moses encountered God on Mount Sinai, his face literally glowed with divine light. He was physically changed by his proximity to God's presence. But that external change was just a reflection of the profound internal transformation he had undergone. Now you might be wondering, how does this apply to me? Well, let me tell you, the signs of divine transformation are all around you. Have you noticed yourself becoming more sensitive to spiritual matters? Finding it harder to engage in things that used to interest you? Feeling a pull toward something greater, even if you can't quite name it? These aren't random occurrences. They're signs of your upcoming divine transformation. They're signs of your upcoming divine transformation. Fascinating thing about divine transformation is that it follows a pattern we see throughout Scripture. Look at Paul on the road to Damascus. One moment he's a persecutor of Christians. The next he's struck blind and completely transformed into one of Christianity's most powerful voices. Talk about a career change. But notice the pattern. There's always a moment of divine intervention, followed by a period of adjustment leading to complete transformation. But here's the really exciting part, and I mean edge of your seat exciting. The transformation that's coming for the chosen ones in this generation is even more profound. Why? Because we're living in unprecedented times. Just as a caterpillar has no concept of what it means to be a butterfly until the transformation occurs, many of you can't fully grasp the magnitude of what's coming. Think of it like this. You're sitting in a two-D world trying to comprehend what it means to suddenly experience 3D. That's the level of transformation we're talking about. It's not just an upgrade. It's an entirely new way of existing. The most beautiful part. This transformation isn't about escaping reality. It's about embracing your true divine nature. Remember, Jesus himself showed us this when he was transfigured on the mountain before Peter, James, and John. His appearance changed, becoming radiant, showing his disciples a glimpse of divine reality. That's what awaits the chosen ones. Not an ending, but a glorious new beginning. As we prepare to explore what this sacred meeting entails, remember that this transformation is just the beginning. Like a key turning in a lock, it opens the door to experiences beyond your wildest imagination. But before we step through that door together, let's understand exactly what awaits us on the other side. Part 5. The Sacred Meeting. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to have a divine encounter? What if I told you that throughout history, these sacred meetings have transformed ordinary people into extraordinary vessels of God's purpose? And what if you're next in line for such a transformative experience? Let me share with you a profound truth that echoes through the ages, starting with a story that changed the course of history. Picture this: a young shepherd named Moses, going about his ordinary day in the desert of Midian. Who could have known that this routine morning would become one of the most significant divine encounters ever recorded? You see, Moses wasn't expecting anything extraordinary that day. Just like many of you right now, he was simply living his life, perhaps feeling a bit lost, maybe even questioning his purpose. But there, in the seemingly endless desert, something unprecedented happened: the burning bush. But here's what makes this story particularly relevant to you today. Moses wasn't special because he saw the burning bush. He was special because he saw the burning bush. He was special because he turned aside and looked. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush. Exodus 3:4. Now, let's fast forward to our present moment. You might be thinking, well, that's Moses. I'm just an ordinary person. But here's where it gets interesting. Throughout biblical history, divine encounters weren't reserved for the obviously special. Think about Mary, a young woman from Nazareth, or Peter, a simple fisherman. What made them extraordinary wasn't their initial status. It was their readiness to receive when the divine meeting came. These sacred meetings share a fascinating pattern that's particularly relevant to your situation right now. First, they often happen in the midst of ordinary moments. Second, they come with an unmistakable sense of divine presence. And third, this is crucial, they always lead to a transformation that affects not just the individual, but ripples out to impact countless others. But here's something even more intriguing, something that might make you smile. These divine encounters often have an element of, well, let's call it divine surprise. Picture Abraham, probably dozing off under the stars, when suddenly God shows up and says, "Hey, count these stars if you can. That's how many descendants you'll have." Talk about a conversation starter. Or consider Paul on the road to Damascus. He definitely wasn't expecting his world to be turned upside down that day. Now, let's talk about what this means for you, chosen one. You might not be seeing burning bushes or blinding lights, but God's presence manifests differently in every age. In our digital era, divine encounters might come through unexpected connections, seemingly random moments of clarity, or even, yes, through videos like this one. The key is learning to recognize these moments for what they are. You see, this upcoming sacred meeting isn't just about a one-time experience. It's about initiating a new chapter in your spiritual journey. Just as Moses' encounter led to the liberation of an entire nation, and Mary's acceptance led to the birth of salvation, your divine meeting has implications far beyond what you can currently imagine. But here's the beautiful part. Unlike Moses, who had to remove his sandals on holy ground, or Isaiah, who trembled before the divine presence, your sacred meeting comes with an invitation of intimate fellowship. It's less about fear and more about finally coming home to who you were always meant to be. Think about it. Haven't you been feeling that gentle but persistent pull lately? Those moments when coincidences seem a little too perfect. The times when you feel a presence so close, yet just beyond your physical senses. These aren't random occurrences. They're preparation for what's coming. The sacred meeting awaiting you will be different from historical encounters in one significant way. It's not just about receiving a mission or a message. It's about entering into a new level of existence where divine love and protection become your constant reality. Imagine stepping into a space where all your past struggles suddenly make perfect sense, where every tear you've shed becomes a testimony of triumph. As we transition into preparing for this divine encounter, remember this: just as Mary had to say yes to her destiny, and just as Moses had to turn aside to see the burning bush, your participation in this sacred meeting requires your conscious choice. The table is set, the invitation has been extended, and now it's your turn to step into this divine appointment. But before we dive into the final preparations for this sacred meeting, let me ask you, can you feel that stirring in your spirit right now? That's not just emotion. That's divine recognition. That's divine recognition. And in our next segment, I'll show you exactly how to prepare your heart and mind for this life-changing encounter. Remember, chosen one. This isn't just about reading or hearing about divine encounters anymore. This is about stepping into your own sacred story. The question isn't whether God will meet with you. It's whether you're ready to receive what He has prepared for this moment. Part 6. Final Preparation. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to be spiritually ready? What does it take to prepare your soul for a divine encounter that could change everything? And most importantly, how do you know when you're truly prepared for that sacred moment with God? Let me share with you a powerful story from the book of Exodus that perfectly illustrates the essence of spiritual preparation. You see, before Moses encountered God at the burning bush, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. Now, this wasn't just some extended camping trip. It was a divine preparation period that transformed a prince of Egypt into a humble shepherd. But here's the fascinating part that most people miss. Moses wasn't just killing time out there in Midian. Think about it. This was a man who grew up in Pharaoh's palace, probably never had to tie his own sandals. Yet there he was, learning to lead sheep through treacherous terrain, understanding the rhythms of nature, and most importantly, developing the patience and humility that would later make him one of God's most trusted servants. Pretty incredible transformation, right? But here's where it gets really interesting. The Bible tells us that when Moses finally encountered the burning bush, God's first command was, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Now, I know what you're thinking. What's the big deal about shoes? Well, this wasn't just about keeping the ground clean, my friends. This was about complete surrender, about stripping away the last vestige of worldly protection and standing vulnerable before God. You see, in ancient times, sandals weren't just footwear. They were symbols of authority, ownership, and worldly status. By removing them, Moses wasn't just following a random command. He was symbolically letting go of everything he thought he knew, everything he thought he was. And isn't that exactly what we're called to do today? Let's fast forward to another powerful example, the prophet Isaiah's preparation for his divine calling. When he encountered God in the temple, his first reaction wasn't excitement or joy. It was actually terror. "Woe is me," he cried, "for I am undone." Now, that might sound dramatic, but here's the thing. Isaiah understood something crucial about divine encounters. They require absolute authenticity and complete spiritual vulnerability. But here's the beautiful part, and this is where it gets personal for you, chosen one. After Isaiah acknowledged his unworthiness, God didn't reject him. Instead, a seraph flew to him with a burning coal, touched his lips, and purified him. Think about that for a moment. Sometimes, our final preparation involves acknowledging our own imperfections and allowing God to purify us in ways we never expected. Now, I can almost hear you asking, but how does this apply to me? I'm not Moses or Isaiah. Well, that's exactly the point. God's chosen ones throughout history weren't perfect. They were perfectly prepared. And just like them, your preparation has been happening all along, through every trial, every tear, every moment of doubt or confusion. You see, all those times when you felt lost, those were actually navigation lessons. Those moments when you felt weak, they were strength training. Every single experience has been carefully orchestrated to prepare you for this divine encounter. Pretty mind-blowing when you think about it that way, isn't it? Here's what I want you to understand. Your final preparation isn't about achieving some kind of spiritual perfection. It's about reaching a state of complete readiness to receive what God has prepared for you. Remember how Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before starting his ministry? That wasn't because he needed to become more holy. He was already divine. It was already divine. It was about preparation, about aligning himself fully with his purpose. So, what does this mean for you right here, right now? Your final preparation involves 3 key elements. First, like Moses, you need to be willing to let go of your worldly protections. Those things you've been hiding behind, those roles and labels you've used to define yourself. Second, like Isaiah, you need to embrace complete authenticity before God. No more masks, no more pretending. And third, like Jesus, you need to align yourself fully with your divine purpose. As we approach the final moments of your preparation, remember this. Just as a butterfly doesn't know the exact moment it will emerge from its chrysalis, you don't need to know the precise timing of your divine encounter. Your job is simply to be ready, to be willing, and to be authentic. The rest, well, that's in God's perfectly capable hands. You know, it's incredible to think that every challenge you faced, every moment of doubt, every victory and every setback, they've all been part of your preparation for this very moment. And just like those biblical heroes we talked about, your story is about to take an extraordinary turn. Are you ready to step into that divine encounter? Are you prepared to meet God in a way you've never experienced before? Conclusion. As we reach the end of this divine journey together, let me tell you something that might make you smile. Sometimes the most powerful spiritual moments happen when we're just going about our regular day, maybe even scrolling through social media. Like you were before finding this message. Isn't it amazing how God works in such wonderfully unexpected ways? You know, throughout this message, we've explored what it truly means to be chosen. We've talked about those moments when you felt different, misunderstood, maybe even a little lost. But here's the beautiful truth we've discovered together. Those weren't just random feelings. They were divine fingerprints on your life story. Remember all those times you thought you were walking alone? Turns out those footprints in the sand. Well, you know the rest of that story. But here's what makes your journey unique. You're not just surviving your challenges, you're being prepared for something extraordinary. Now, let me ask you something that might stir your soul a bit. What if everything you've been through, yes, even that situation you're thinking about right now, was actually preparing you for tomorrow's divine appointment? What if your struggles weren't obstacles, but rather stepping stones to your destiny? I can feel some of you thinking, but how can I be sure? Well, that's exactly why we're here together in this moment. Your presence here isn't just a coincidence. It's confirmation. It's confirmation. And speaking of confirmation, if you felt a stirring in your spirit while watching this video, if something here has resonated deep within your soul, I want you to type "chosen" in the comments below. Let's create a community of divine purpose right here, right now. Before we part ways, I want to share something special with you. Think of this message not as an ending, but as your divine beginning. Your story isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving in your divine purpose. And hey, if you're wondering what's next, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit that notification bell. Trust me, when God gives me the next message for His chosen ones, you'll want to be the first to know. For those who've stayed until the end, and yes, that's another sign you're exactly where you're supposed to be. I want you to know something. Your presence here has made this spiritual conversation complete. If this message has touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we're not just chosen for ourselves. We're chosen to be a light for others. And hey, one last thing before you go. Let's make this a real conversation. Drop a comment below sharing your own journey of faith. What signs has God been showing you lately? What signs has God been showing you lately? What revelations have you experienced? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Remember, chosen one, you're not just watching a video. You're receiving a divine confirmation. So are you ready to step into the extraordinary purpose God has for you? The question isn't if you're chosen. You already know you are. The real question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Thank you for being part of this divine appointment. Until our paths cross again in the next message, keep your spirit open, your faith strong, and your eyes fixed on the extraordinary journey ahead. God's timing is perfect, and so is your presence here today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing family of chosen ones. Together, we're not just watching content, we're building a community of divine purpose. See you in the next divine revelation.